And, I think a conversation needs to happen, right? I mean, is it right to have a cyber community on the board? Why don't you have a legal committee? Why don't you have a marketing committee? Why do you have sales committee, right? I mean, it's not all the same. And I think we still need to figure out what's the right contrast, or the right construct, I mean, to put there. But I do think that the expertise needs to be there in some form or fashion.
Welcome to the Risk Never Sleeps podcast, in which we discuss the people that are protecting patient care. I'm Ed Gaudet, the host of our program, and today I'm pleased to be joined by Yaron Levi, the CISO, Chief Information Security Officer of Dolby Research, right?
Yeah, Dolby Laboratories, yes.
Dolby Laboratories, right?
Yeah.
And so it's a little different than healthcare, but you do have some background in the payer space. I believe you were at Blue Cross Blue Shield.
I did spend 8 years, in healthcare. I consider that one of my tour of duties, because I spent with about 3 years with Cerner, which is a healthcare IT.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Then Blue Cross Blue Shield for 5 years. So spent a lot of time in healthcare.
Right. Well, you have a unique background because you've done a couple different industries. And how you got here is also interesting. So I think our listeners would be really intrigued about literally how you got to become a CISO. I think you were a sales engineer at one point, right? In your career? Or?
Yeah. So I guess, I don't know how far you want to go back, but I'm originally from Israel, and I served in the military in Israel. It's mandatory service. I was an intelligence officer. And when I left the service, I started my own company. And did that for about 6 years. And then I thought that back in 98 that I invented e-learning. And everybody said, oh, nobody's ever going to learn through the internet. And no, this is a stupid idea. And just, but I tried and failed. And, that changed my course to like, okay, I need to do something a bit different. And I got an opportunity actually in the telecom space. And started working for a company still in Israel. And they 6 months in, they said, do you want to move to the US because we have a project for 2 years that we need your help with over there? And I said, yeah, sure. For 2 years, and we just had a new baby at that time. And my wife said, yeah, I can, work from there, or just, we can work, just going to live on your salary, and we can work from there, and we can stay with the baby.
All right.
And 20 years later, here we are. But yeah, I spent quite a time in telecom, and then I switched to another company that was I'm in Kansas City, that was actually in the automotive space and provide some technology services for automotive. And I think throughout my career, I was both on the kind of one leg on the business side and the other leg in the technology side. So I was a sales engineer, I was like a project manager, I was an account manager. I mean, I did a bunch of different things. And somehow or another, I stumbled on security. I mean, throughout the different things I was doing, and not only I found really interesting, but also it reminded me a lot of the things I did during my military service. And it was almost like a calling because being in security is like you're part of something bigger than just yourself, and you get an opportunity to support and a lot of companies and people, and that's what I enjoy about it. So that's how I guess kind of started with that. And I really had an opportunity to work with like really great people and people who believed in me. And that's the other great things about security. There's an awesome community, and you're always going to find somebody who is willing to help and teach and advise. So that's how I learned. And from there, from that company that was in the automotive space, I moved to eBay. I spent a couple of years there. And then Intuit, and then Cerner, and then Blue Cross, and now Dolby. So I switched to different industries, and I find it fascinating just, to get that experience from different places. Yeah.
I have a very similar background. I think that perspective too gives you, in some ways, an advantage over other folks that stay in that one particular industry. They may rise through the ranks, but they miss that perspective that you can get from other industries. How has that helped you out in your career?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, what I'm finding is that there's actually more common than none in the industries, right? So I understand that a lot of companies, they just want to have a proven commodity, from the same industry who understands and everything. And that's fine. And that's fair. but I think a lot of those skills or a lot of that knowledge is learnable, teachable. I mean, so I don't find it as a barrier. I think the difference is what skills do you have that make you who you are, right? Are you able to build relationships? Are you able to educate others, to mentor others, to communicate, properly, and things like that? Build that trust. And if you can do that, then you can work in any industry. So,
why do you think it's difficult for cybersecurity professionals in particular to communicate with business?
A lot of us are first and foremost are nerds. And, so that's maybe like the first thing, right? And a lot of us are very strategic thinkers, and many people are more introverted, if you will, right? A lot of us, and I know I'm a little exaggerating and generalizing, but we're not known for our shyness, and we sometimes kind of look for, where the things are kind of on the edge and not like kind of the mainstream. And sometimes in the corporate, I mean, it doesn't fly very well, right? So I think that's one thing. A lot of us very specialized, in different things. But I would say one of the things that for a lot of cybersecurity folks, they care. And I don't know any cyber professional that doesn't care. So they have their heart in the right place. And if you're highly specialized, then really, I mean, go down in the professional lane. Sometimes to make the switch to the business side, and it's not that easy, especially if you're like not the subject matter expert anymore. Now you have to feel much more comfortable with chaos and knowing that you can't control everything, and some things are going to fall to the floor, and there's nothing much you can do about it. So it's a challenge. It's a skill, and I think what will happen is that as you rise through the ranks, and the more you move towards the business side, you need to rely more on your EQ than IQ necessarily, right?
It's so true,
and that's a shift. That's a shift.
Yeah. No, that's so true. Especially, I think, when you're communicating risks at a business level, because ultimately it becomes a business decision,
Correct,
as to take the risk or not take the risk. Obviously,
correct.
What keeps you up at night?
I think it's like everybody else. I think we definitely have a heightened sensitivity to risks, and seeing things that many others are not aware to, or don't fully grasp and understand. But then we feel that burden of responsibility, and again, talking about that mission. That's keep us up at night, right? I mean, we're always outnumbered. We're always understaffed, under budgeted. Always, like all of us. And it's hard to keep up. It's hard to keep up, what's going on. Obviously, we're doing the best we can. I think we definitely came a long way. We're continuing to improve, as an industry, as a community, not just, as a company, right? And I think the great thing that is happening is that we started years ago, but now I think see it more and more, to collaborate more and support each other, whether it's between companies and government, and others, and other things. So, we came a long way. Bad guys also came a long way, right?
They certainly have.
So we gotta have to keep up. What we've been doing is pretty new. 20, 30 years. I mean, probably not more than that. So we're still learning. I think a lot of what I'm seeing that it's troubling is how sometimes maybe regulations, governments, law, kind of, they don't always kind of keep up. And sometimes what we're seeing coming out is not optimal, or kind of troubling, right?
You see it right now with AI, with artificial intelligence. You see the technology, even in the last 4 months, 5 months, has come so far, and regulation is still trying to understand, is it 3 letters or 2 letters? What's this thing we're dealing with?
Yeah.
And now,
I think it's fascinating, right? If you think about how fast, we adopt technologies, right? It's funny, but there's an interesting website. I was just talking to a friend about this. There's an interesting website out there. It's called Our World in Data. And they have a bunch of like information that about different things, right? As an example, for flashing toilet, it took 60 years in the US to get 20% market adoption between 1860 and 1920. 60 years.
60. Wow.
ChatGPT, to get to 100 million users, it took them less than a month. Right? So think about like, how fast things are changing these days, right? And how do we keep up? And how do we adapt to all of that? So
yeah, like threads, they turn threads on, and how many days did it take for them to get to 70
right.
or 80 million users, right?
Yeah.
It's absolutely incredible. And where do you see the space go? Where do you see AI taking us over the next couple of years?
It's a great technology, great force multiplier. Definitely, I mean, it's one of those things that I don't think that, we can put this genie back in the bottle. It has great promises and great opportunities, but also have a lot of threats. So it definitely, I think it's a force. I feel it's kind of more of a force multiplier for a lot of things. You can do things faster and in a larger scale and whatever. Like everything else, whether we're going to use it for good or bad, it's up to us, right? It's like nuclear technology. I mean, you can do good things with it, and power a lot of, provide a lot of power and relatively clean power and so on, and you can kill a lot of people with it. Whatever we decide to do, it's up to us. So yeah, it's kind of the same thing, I think, in many ways.
What are some of the things you're doing at Dolby that you wish your peers would know about, or maybe peers within other industries could learn from?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's something that, is specific for Dolby. I think it's more of again, as an industry, like the collaboration, really focusing on aligning with the business, where the business goals are. How do we support the business? How do we enable the business to go there? And also realizing that, like you mentioned, at the end of the day, it's a business decision. So our goal is to, to educate, to support, to advise the business on the risk, help, when it comes to like, defense, and things like that, regulations, compliance. But at the end of the day, it's a business decision. Mm-hmm. So I think, in most industries, that's how we need to think about it. How do we align more with the business, and how do we more support the business? How do we become part of the business? Because I think oftentimes I see this us versus them mentality, which, again, we are them. So, right. I mean, so that's,
we are.
I think that's, kind of where we need to align more.
Yeah. How about at the board level?
Yeah, I think there's more education that needs to happen, right? Again, it's relatively new. Mm-hmm. We have now conversations about the SEC and potentially new regulations around cyber, right?
Yes.
Which I think it was postponed to October now, at least. But it's one of those things that if we think back, we did not need to have somebody with financial expertise on the board until about 2004 timeframe. It was like the Sarbanes-Oxley Act.
That's right, Sarbanes. Yep.
Right. So it's only 19 years. Yeah. So now it's kind of sound it's kind of ridiculous. What do you mean? Like we never had like somebody with financial background on the board before that? Yeah. Well, we didn't have to, right?
Right.
Again, security is relatively new. Now, whether we need somebody with cyber expertise on the board or not, I don't know. There's still debatable, but it's definitely something that we need to educate. It's something that the board, need to understand better. Yeah. I think, yes, it will benefit to have people without expertise on the board and kind of helping and supporting. But yeah, we still have ways to go. Again, it's still relatively new.
Yeah, I'd like to see change over the next couple of years in this area. I think it's a big issue. I mean, you have audit committees, you have comp committees, you have finance committees. Mm-hmm. Why don't you have a cyber security committee with actual expertise on the board that can help really drive that?
And I think a conversation needs to happen, right? I mean, is it right to have a cyber committee on the board? Why don't you have a legal committee? Why don't you have a marketing committee? Why don't you have sales committee, right? I mean, it's not all the same. And I think we still need to figure out what's the right contrast or the right construct, I mean, to put there. But I do think that the expertise needs to be there in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
I think
most
that need to be
companies have
there.
it in audit, or it's buried in audit.
Yeah.
Which, again, it's good that at least it's somewhere, but I just feel like it gets diluted in that area because there's so much to do in audit.
Yeah. I think as a major, especially in this day and age, when we think about like, digital economy and everything is digital, it's a major risk that, we need to think about, and maybe it warrants its own committee. Maybe not just cyber, but maybe more like cyber and, some technology or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's not just technology. So I don't know that we know exactly what's the right construct is, but I think definitely we need to get better where we are today. Yeah.
Agree. And so, last couple of years have been difficult for a lot of people, the pandemic. What are you most proud of personally and professionally?
So for me, the pandemic has had two things. One, I actually took the role at Dolby during the pandemic. I actually started talking to them in September of 20. And I started to work in January of 21. And, I work from home now. And when they interviewed me, they said, even if we are here in San Francisco, you cannot come to the office at least until June of 21. And that was September of 20. The first time I saw somebody face to face was October. So everything was this, right? I mean, and how do you build relationships? How do you build trust? How do you build friendships? How do you integrate? And I'm happy to say that, it worked very well. You have to be very intentional. You have to do a lot of different things. But I think the culture of the company is such that it enabled that. And the people are really wonderful people that, to work with, So it was exciting because, when I met some of the people, like the first after like 10 months, people I already kind of considered friends and that I had like a connection with, but I never saw them.
Yeah. Isn't that strange? I remember the first time I met someone physically after spending a lot of time with them on Zoom. And it was a bit of a cognitive dissonance. Like, I expected you to be taller or, shorter or whatever.
Yeah. But I think, putting together the program, helping building the team, connecting with the team, connecting, just in the broader team, right? In the company and stuff like that. And continue to operate, continue to enable the business, continue to provide that support to the business, despite all the challenges that we had. I think, I'm proud of the team of how they were able to accomplish that. So yeah, that's awesome. Good.
Outside of security, what would you be doing? What are you most passionate about?
A lot of things, I think, but I don't get to do them too much, I guess.
It's always the case.
Yeah. I think, one of my resolutions for this year, which I'm glad I started, actually I wanted to do it for a very long time. I started to learn how to play piano. And yeah, right. So it's a completely out from everything else that I do, because I do a lot of things in the community and in security and, people and my friends and everything, but that's different. So yeah, I practice daily, and I have a teacher. And I practice with her once a week. And yeah, it's hard. It's not easy to start playing piano when you're not 5 years old.
I tried guitar and didn't end well.
So, but I enjoy it so far. So yeah.
And what's your musical inspiration? Is there a particular genre of music that you like?
I think I like everything. I listen to a lot of things. I can listen to classical and I can listen to heavy metal. So I like everything. Some of the music my kids listen to, I'm not too crazy about, but yeah, I listen to a lot of things. So
what's your go-to playlist? What are your bands that you go to often?
Oh, definitely like 80s and 80 rock.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I would say 70s and 80s. And so
70s and 80s. All right.
Yeah. So Queen and
Rolling Stones,
Guns N' Roses, and
okay,
not as much, but I would say definitely Stairway to Heaven.
And, Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. My kids always kind of make fun of me when I kind of play it in the car.
What 80s
Dad
bands do you
again?
like? I'm a huge Cure fan. Do you like the Cure or the Smiths?
Oh yeah,
or any of those?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, almost anything 80s. I can.
I'm the same way.
I can listen to. Yeah. So,
how about jazz?
Jazz, yeah. Jazz, country.
Country. Wow.
Even though I wasn't born here, I like country music.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
have you ever
yeah,
heard of the band called The Band?
no, I actually hear those. No, I
It's
didn't hear that one.
it's an Americana. It's combines. It's actually a Canadian band, believe it or not. But it combines a lot of musical elements that are part of America. But they've got they've got incredible piano and organ sound, and they were the backing band for Bob Dylan.
Oh wow!
And then they came out on their own, and they have their once you hear the songs, you'll know who they are.
I will definitely
people just
check
don't
it
know
out.
them
Yeah,
by the band,
by the name. Yeah.
But check them out because if you like that type of music, you might like them.
Yeah, I also like, I went to last weekend. I went to the Taylor Swift concert with my daughter.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah. So, like I said, I span all decades. Yeah.
Look at you. Well, I'm a deadhead. So I just I did 5 shows in the last couple of weeks.
Nice. Very good.
I love music. So, what would you tell your 20-year-old self if you go back in time?
Oh wow, that's a great question. I would say trust your gut and tune out the noise.
Yeah.
I think in my younger years, probably listened to too much and was more concerned about what other people think and what other people say.
Yeah.
Maybe it comes with age. I don't know. And some people told me not to do some things, and I listened to them not doing those things, and now I regret not doing those things, and whatever. But I would say, trust your gut, tune out the noise, not completely close your ears, but tune out the noise.
Yeah. Things
are going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's great. Yeah. It's a very common response to the question, which I love. And it's surprising because I would have thought people would have said, buy Microsoft or invest in Apple.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. That's the. And then lastly, because I'd be remiss if I didn't ask this question. This is the Risk Never Sleeps podcast.
Mm-hmm.
What is the riskiest thing you've ever done?
I've done a lot of risky things. Maybe I would go with stupid risk. Is that okay?
Do whatever you want. Yeah.
Okay.
No rule. This is a no rules podcast.
Well, risky things between, starting a company, closing a company, failing with a company, succeeding, whatever.
That's
right. Moving to another country, it's risky. But
yeah,
I will go with a stupid risk. I think I was 15 and a friend of mine and me, we really, really wanted to drive. And in Israel, you cannot drive until you are 17 and a half. So we found an abandoned car somewhere. That was just, I don't know how many years it didn't drive. And we decided to restore it and drive it at 15. And mind you, that's no internet back then. So we found books and different things in libraries.
And how did you restore it so your parents didn't know you were restoring the car, or did you keep it in
so my friend's dad had a workshop and in that, it was kind of a little town they lived in. And so it was in the workshop. His friends, his dad knew, my parents, they kind of knew, they didn't really care much about that. Yeah. But we were working in that workshop of his dad, and we pretty much stripped the car, from everything. We just kind of left the chassis, the engine, the steering wheel, the gear and everything else. But then the next thing was to and we couldn't find a lot of parts. Some we could, but the next thing was to make the engine run. So we found books and we were able to fix the engine. So that was good, but we had 2 problems. We didn't have a battery and we did not have a fuel tank. The fuel tank didn't work. It was just
those are 2 big problems.
Yeah. So we found some old battery from a truck. It was huge. And so we just mounted in the front somehow.
Great.
And
nothing bad's going to happen when you do that.
Right. That's why it was a stupid risk, right? And then for the fuel, what we did, it was a carburetor, right? So we're not doing fuel injection. It was old cars.
Yeah.
So we didn't also have an air filter. So what we did, the diameter of the carburetor was pretty much the same as a mayo can. So we took a plastic mayo can and we stuffed some sponge inside. That was our filter, and we just put it on the carburetor, and we just kind of taped that.
That's great.
And then for the fuel, what we did, we ran like the fuel line, the gas. I'm sorry, like the gas line, that goes to the carburetor. But because we didn't have like a tank, we took this plastic can. So my friend was driving, I was sitting next to him holding the plastic can with gasoline inside, and the pipe just kind of goes in there, and we just drove as long as that, until it ran out. So thinking back, it was like, it's really stupid, but we took the risk. I guess we had a lot of fun.
How far did you go? That sounds great.
We did that for months. I mean, we were driving in the fields, and not on the roads, but like in the fields. And
that's so great. It's almost like a go-kart. I mean, we did it with go-karts, but you did it with a real car.
Yeah, we didn't have any money, so like whatever, we take the fuel bucks or whatever.
How long did that take you from when you found the car to actually getting in operation?
I think we've done it for probably a year and a half. Between everything and.
That's so great.
Yeah, until we were stopped by police. Like there was some police officer who told us something, and they came, and it was funny because like he didn't know if to laugh or to be mad at us, because when he saw what we did,
you're sitting there holding the gas.
Yeah, like and he's like, just go home. I don't want to see you ever again.
Just
type of thing. And we stopped after that. Like 15-year-old, like okay, the police were kind of afraid.
Probably not a good idea to continue at that point. They know who you are. They've got you. Yeah. Very good. Well, thank you very much. Any other last comments to the listeners on the program?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, thank you for having me. This is fun. Cybersecurity, as you mentioned, right? We're dealing with risk. Risk is our business.
That's right.
And the more we can partner with the business, the more we can become the trusted advisor for the business on risk. And it's not the only risk, and we need to understand it's not the only risk for the business. But that's the mission, and that's the mission, to help. And when we deal with, you mentioned healthcare at the beginning, and my tour of duty in healthcare, we're dealing with people's lives, and it's important. So it's not just about compliance, it's not just about regulations. These are important too, but also at the end of the day, we also have to remember that there's a person on the other side, and that person, their life can be impacted, their financial, their health, whatever. So that's the mission. It's a hard mission. I'm glad there are a lot of smart and good people in this community who are, operating for that mission, and just keep going. Somebody has to do it.
Thank you very much. That's a great way to end the program. Yaron, thank you very much for your time, and to our listeners, thank you. This is Ed Gaudet from the Risk Never Sleeps podcast. If you're on the front lines protecting patient safety, remember to stay vigilant, because risk never sleeps. And we are out. Let me just stop this.